Oh, we're recording already. Let me turn that. Just let me start the recording. Okay, hi, and hi everybody coming on. I'll just say a little bit about what we're going to be doing tonight while we're waiting for people to come on to the chat. And just to let you all know that we're going to be recording this chat. So last week we did our first of the Temple Talks with Sarah Rose Bright, and just because of the nature of the chat that we were having, which was about pleasure and breast massage and lots of disclosures and sharings about our breasts and our relationship with our breasts, that we decided that it probably wasn't the most appropriate of the Temple Talks to share, because we just wanted to protect that lovely intimate space that we'd created together. But in this conversation, I would like to share it because there's a number of women who want to access this talk who can't attend the circle tonight. So for those people who are on and they're attending this talk tonight, if you think that you might want to chat with Rachel about anything and ask us any questions or just join in the conversation, but you may not want your name to be used, then you can change your name. So if you hover over your own name, then you should see a function there to change it. But we will only use you by first name reference if we do kind of engage you and interact with the chat during this discussion. And the chat itself isn't recorded, and I've just worked out how to do that tonight. I feel really accomplished. Oh my goodness, these Zooms. Hey Rachel, were you a Zoom, were you great at Zoom before all of this? Did you
I've been using Zoom for the last year and a half,
so you were sorted.
Yeah.
My lighting keeps going kind of in and out. I think I'm going to just change my position. Yeah, I've used it a little bit, but oh my goodness, I feel like I've got a degree in Zoom now. I feel like I'm like learning a new thing with it every week. Okay, so welcome. We're going to get started. There's a lovely little bunch joining the discussion, and we've got Rachel.
Yay!
So Rachel, I'm going to officially introduce you if that's all right. Welcome to our second Temple Talk. I'm just really just excited and inspired and humbled to be able to have such amazing women come on and just share their incredible knowledge, their stories, their wisdom that is just going to help and empower women. So I feel really lucky to have you, and it's our second of the Temple Talks. And so I'm going to introduce you. Rachel Foy is a food addiction therapist, an eating psychology coach and author. Rachel helps women overcome addictive eating, food obsession, binge eating by showing them how to feed their hungry souls, which we'll come to in a minute, because I really want to know what a hungry soul is, and awaken their spiritual path. So you're an author, you've written a book, you work with women, you've got courses online, you're doing a lot of stuff.
I'm busy in a good way though, in a good way.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the talk. I always like to talk about, before we start, the whys behind this discussion, your work. Can we start there?
We can. Do you want me to kind of explain a bit about my story? Like what's been happening?
Yeah, let's start from you. Let's right into the nitty gritty. Let's get really real. What's your story?
I'm going to condense this because otherwise we might be here for hours and hours, because the path has been slightly winding, shall we say. So a shortened version of it is I had a lot of food issues from about the age of 14 up until kind of late 20s. When I say food issues, it started off with me just wanting to lose a bit of weight. I started dieting. It was what, all my friends were doing. It's what like my mum was doing. But that for me actually was like the catalyst of me going on to this like slippery slope into full food dysfunction, eating disorders, food obsession. I became kind of a bit of an exercise addict as well. So I was using a lot of exercise in a very self-destructive way, and that lasted for about 15 years, which is quite a long time really.
So it's from the age of 14 for about 15 years.
It's about 15 is when I can pinpoint exactly when it kind of started. And that kind of period over that sort of 14 to 15 years, I still went to college, I went to uni, I did my degree, I moved to Germany. But the whole time this food issue was like, it was massive, like it completely dominated everything. And I think sometimes when people haven't maybe experienced food dysfunction to that extreme, it's quite hard to comprehend how something can be so consuming, but it literally was. It was the minute I woke up until the minute I went to bed, I was thinking about calories. I was planning what I was going to eat. I was working out how many calories I had to burn off in the gym because I thought I might have overeaten the day before. So completely obsessive. And then towards the end of my 20s, I was due to get married. And 6 months before my wedding, my fiance left me for someone else, which was at the time horrific, but I'm saying it with a smile now because
you're like, thank fuck.
Like the biggest blessing ever. And that was the catalyst for so much that I'm sure we're going to talk about. So me healing it all, figuring out who I was, changing my path, the whole spiritual journey, it was like a massive dark night of the soul, like everything in one. And it was from that point then that everything, not quickly, didn't happen overnight, but it was a journey then of unraveling everything that I'd found myself in. And fast forward to now, and I'm a therapist, and I teach women and I help women and I empower women with this stuff because there's so much that I kind of share from a very personal point of view, as well as obviously professionally. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Well, can I just kind of pick a bit of that nutshell?
Yes.
Because the dark night of the soul really interests me, and I really am fascinated by what is it that that flicks that switch, that sends someone into that despair, that they then rise up like a phoenix from the ashes, you know, but with it just so much more knowledge, wanting to know themselves. So what did that look like for you? Like, what was that moment of like, fuck, something needs to change?
It was hitting rock bottom. It was getting to that place after kind of relationship breakdown and stuff, and I found myself kind of moved locations. I got my own apartment, so I was then living on my own. And just realizing that I completely was at rock bottom, you know, and actually that picture, as you say, like the phoenix rising, I can still kind of remember being in this like really big, deep, dark hole. Like it's the only way that I can explain it. And actually being in that place of, I don't know who I am. I don't know who, like my identity was completely lost when we weren't together anymore, because we had been for such a long time as well. So like my future plans had disappeared. I didn't know where I was meant to be. I didn't know what I was meant to do. And it was feeling completely, I can't use any other word apart from lost, detached, lost, disconnected. And actually realizing that I couldn't have gotten any lower than what I was at the time. And actually I'm so grateful for a few friends of mine back then when I was living in Germany who were very kind of tough love, and they were like, look, you need to go and get some help, because they could see that I'd spiraled into a place of, it wasn't just heartbreak, it was something else. So actually with their encouragement, they actually encouraged me to go and speak to someone. So I actually started seeing a therapist, which I think is where my fascination for me personally kind of came into that. But I think,
So at that point, the relationship ended, you ended up at rock bottom. What part of that, I mean, obviously you had a spiritual awakening, you know, piecing yourself back together. You didn't know who you were, and slowly but surely it sounds like you pieced your life back together. What element of that became food related? What was the link there, you know, for you?
The link for me, and this is where my true fascination around the whole food obsession, food dysfunction came from, and it was my own experience, because up until that point I had this obsession with food, as I've just explained. So it was in my thoughts. It was like literally every waking moment was food, body image, weight, upset, like everything. It was all of that stuff. This relationship broke down, and I ended up in this place of not in a very good place, let's put it that way. And it was during that time of actually working with the therapist that we started unraveling stuff, and it was all about me. We didn't speak about food, we didn't talk about like my body image, like none of that was spoken about. It was all about me. And actually, as that was happening over a period of time, the side effect was that I kind of didn't obsess as much about food. So by working on me, and by actually acknowledging how I was feeling, what was going on for me in terms of like my thoughts, and the side effect was that the food stuff started to heal. And again, I didn't want to sort of paint the picture that this happened within like 24 hours. There was a process behind this. But it was fascinating that I could have had 14, 15 years of complete eating disorders to suddenly within like a 6-month period, and actually recognizing that I wasn't obsessed anymore, or I wasn't binging to the extent that I had been. And it was that awakening of like, this is really fascinating. Like, how come that has sort of shifted and healed itself when we haven't actually worked on it? I've not been doing anything about that, but I have been fully owning my stuff.
Yeah,
And
and I think that's like an amazing offering to anybody that be listening to this call or doing any kind of self-development. Kind of think that, you know, sometimes we go really into what we think is the problem, and we start kind of trying to take that top off that bottle and get like, right, we'll sort that out. But actually, sometimes just from doing that unraveling work means that everything else starts to fall into place. So, which suggests that food is just a byproduct of a much deeper longing, need.
Absolutely, which is the whole, you know, as you mentioned on that sort of introduction about like the hungry soul and like the soul awakening and the spiritual stuff, like it's so connected.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about the hungry soul?
Absolutely. So let me just kind of backtrack and sort of explain where hungry soul came from. So I kind of had my experience. I then decided this is what I want to do. So I started training, did all like my professional stuff. And as I was working with women professionally, I was working with a lot of women who had food issues and like body insecurities, shall we say. So as I was working with them, I started to recognize a really clear pattern between like 99% of these women that were coming in to see me in the clinic that I was working out of. And actually kind of speaking to them, I could hear and I could feel and I could witness them basically expressing that they weren't kind of feeling full up with life. Like they were feeling quite empty in like a marriage or in a relationship, or they talk about jobs that they were in that just drained them. And it was that feeling of, I've got to go to work to pay the bills. And that again sort of sparked that curiosity of, well, I don't think it's about the food. I think it's actually all this stuff is feeding into the food dysfunction. So I kind of coined the phrase hungry soul syndrome, because I started to recognize that pretty much every single woman that I ever ended up working with and still do, when they're under this umbrella of food dysfunction, binging all the time, food obsession, etc., they can often have hungry soul syndrome, meaning that there's a part of their soul that's hungry for more. They're craving more out of life. And that can be in any area. It can often be in some of the more significant ones, so relationships, jobs, careers, etc. Not always, but quite often. And it's only when a woman fully can own that for herself that the food stuff starts to heal. Because food dysfunction of any kind, and I'm sure we're going to talk about a few in like later on, it's all symptomatic, it's surface layer, it's metaphorical, it's energetic, it's not the issue, like you said before, Kate. You know, it's the symptom, it's the byproduct of all this stuff going on at such a deeper level.
Yeah. And I presume what you mean when you say like food being metaphoric and symbolic is something to do with the fact that the soul's hungry, it's not being fed, and so that need isn't being acknowledged, it's yearning, and that yearning is being interpreted as hunger, and then food's being put in, or is it being pushed in to feed it or to push it down, or to, how does that work?
It can be all of those things. So food can often be used in a very simple form. Food is often used to push and suppress, like we numb out with food. Obviously we can use other things like alcohol and cigarettes and drugs and all kinds, but kind of within this conversation, food is often used as a form of pressing and suppressing, so kind of pushing things down. The other way though that food is often used is the symbolism. So if anyone that's like watching or listening right now, and they identify themselves as being an emotional eater or a binge eater or a food obsessive, everyone's
my hands up. Emotional eater. My name is Kate and I'm an emotional eater. Yeah, let's join in, people. Do feel free to join in.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. There's often an element of that behavior around the food, that there's a part of that individual who's actually seeking something through the act of eating. And it's not about eating the chocolate, and it's not about the crisps or the cakes as in the physical food. Obviously there's an element to that, but if we look at this on a more spiritual soul level, food is actually allowing that individual to obtain something symbolically. So food can be used as a substitute for love, for comfort, for safety, for security. It can be used as a form of grounding. It can be used as a form of protection. Like, there's so many ways that we can use food, but quite often we don't see that because we're too much in the realm of, I shouldn't be doing it, I'm trying to be good, I shouldn't be having this. So we're kind of not seeing like that spiritual message that's actually there underneath, if we actually give ourselves permission to see it.
And what I'm thinking about me, and I wouldn't refer to myself as having food dysfunction, although that probably somehow fits into the family of food dysfunction. I would say that, my menstrual cycle, I want to eat. When I feel low, I want to eat. If I have an argument with my boyfriend, I want to eat. There's all sorts of reasons. Even sometimes, actually, I'm feeling really happy, I want to eat. And, when people go through quite traumatic experiences, painful experience, heartbreak, I remember my first heartbreak, and one of my best friends was like, well, there is a silver cloud to this, at least you'll get skinny. And I was like, that was how people referred to it, wasn't it? Well, we'll get skinny, as though skinny was a really great thing. And I didn't. I got really big because my way of coping was food. So I was like, there's no fucking silver lining for me. I just eat away my sorrows and put on weight. So that never happened to me. So I suppose my question with that is, and for people who are listening who are like emotional eaters, at what point can we create that cycle break where we, because I can't see, like I've had an argument with my boyfriend and I think, right, I'm just going to fuck it and I'm going to have all that chocolate that's in the fridge. What can we do then to intercept that way of being, that reaching for comfort?
Yeah, okay. So I think the first thing that I want to say is that it's not fundamentally wrong to eat in any of those examples that you gave. So there's often a lot of guilt attached to the way that we try and eat, because social pressure, like we have this perception that there should be a perfect way and there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And certainly from my experience, that can also be part of the issue, because a lot of guilt and shame from food choices comes from this social conditioning. However, in response to your question, permission is so important. So one of the things that I really encourage everybody to do, whether they are turning to food emotionally or it's binging or whatever, is even if they have an awareness that maybe in that moment they might not be needing the food, as in it's not about nourishing, it's not about giving their food, like their body food for energy purposes, it's more about coping or feeling better or making yourself, lift yourself up a little bit. Even in that moment, is to still give yourself permission to do it, because 99% of the time we often don't. So thinking of those examples that you've just said then, even though you probably still eat when you've had a bad day or you've had an argument with someone, there's still probably a part of you that's like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but sod it, I'm going to do it regardless. It's kind of done through rebellion. And actually that kind of state of rebellion, oh, sod it, I'm just going to fucking do it regardless.
Yeah, mine's like a real fuck it.
Exactly.
It's got that energy of I don't give a shit.
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with that. But if you notice that next time, could you fully surrender to, I'm going to give myself full, complete permission to eat this massive bar of chocolate? Because that in itself can often, I know this sounds very counterintuitive, but it can often actually diffuse the desire to keep eating, or it can diffuse the need to kind of eat in that way in the first place. Because often we're feeding that act. If you're in that place of, okay, rebellion, sod it, I'm going to do it regardless, you're kind of adding fuel to the fire. So if you're already feeling annoyed or hurt or upset, that also feeds the emotion that can then often feed the need to eat. So it's a cycle. So
it's a lot about the intention then with which you eat.
Intention is a really interesting one with eating, because a lot of women don't realize that quite often they don't have intention of when they're eating. Emotional eaters often don't eat connected to the food. We're often eating it in that state of it's a state of a heightened emotion, isn't it? Whether it be upset or pain or anger or even happiness, there can be sort of a lack of intent in some ways, because we don't often taste the food when we're eating it. We're just like, "Urgh."
Yeah. Oh, that hand up again. Um, and by the way, just to intercept the conversation, this is really fascinating. Thank you so much, Rachel. Just to intercept the conversation for a second, just to kind of bring in everyone that's in the chat, please feel free to write any questions that you have for Rachel, anything you want to involve, just bring yourself into the conversation. And I was saying at the beginning, but there was quite a few people that have come on since then. The chat doesn't get recorded, but this call will. And so if you don't want to be referred to by name, just change your name. There's some function, I think if you hover over your name, you should be able to rename yourself, but we will only use you by first name anyway. But if you want to give yourself an alias, feel free.
All names welcomed.
Yeah, I can see the people I know getting really cheeky in this call and going, ha, and changing their names to something really rude. Okay, so going back to that then, so intention we talked about, and then we talked about the way in which we eat, and you were saying, a lot of the time, we're kind of eating quite fast or mindlessly. I think I know I eat so fast. I eat so fast, and I've got this story, whether it's true or not, but I come from a really big family, and we were quite a poor family growing up. Sorry, Mum, but we were, and so what we had on our plate was it. That was it. And I had brothers, and we all ate really fast, and I feel like if we didn't eat fast enough, then someone would pick off your plate, and so you're almost like, fuck you. I'll leave it in a while it's there. Otherwise someone would swoop in and be like, you're not eating that, and they take, and so I wonder if that's where that comes from for me, that kind of still in my head. I'm this little girl who's like, eat really fast or your dinner will be taken off you.
Yeah, more than likely. We have a lot of conditioning around food, don't we? And that's a really good example. Any kind of behavior that often, even as grown women, that people perhaps again sort of listening and watching might identify with, that has come from somewhere. As with everything, we are so conditioned as we grow and as we evolve, and dynamics and relationships, like everything is influencing us. And actually this is part of that sort of spiritual journey, is to start recognizing like what is truly ours, like in our soul, and actually what have we collected along the way. And that dynamic around food specifically, it's quite surprising how much of someone's behavior and thoughts and beliefs around food is actually not really theirs on a soul level. It's what they've acquired from upbringing, family dynamic, what they've witnessed, and that sort of scarcity mindset, in a way, that is actually really common in food stuff. So people who won't leave food on their plate, they have to clear everything. I'm like,
oh my God, I feel like I need to have some coaching with you. I'm a prime example.
Well, that's okay. That's why we're having this conversation, because this is actually really common.
I don't leave anything on my plate.
So that's actually rooted in a lot of belief systems around scarcity mindset, as in like, I can't leave it. I have to make sure that it's all gone. Now, again, we're not criticizing that. We're not judging it. However, when this comes to kind of that full like awakening of who we truly are, quite often it might be, again, using you as an example, Kate, that in that moment of you finishing your plate, your kind of hunger has already been satisfied, but actually you're overriding it, because it's more about just eating whatever happens to be there. So that kind of self-awareness is about that fine-tuning of actually understanding and knowing who you truly are and your body.
Yeah.
So,
and that's really interesting that you use the scarcity mindset, because it's making me think. I've done a lot of work around money. Like money's a big thing. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in the call have as well. Your money, what did you learn about money growing up? What did people teach you about money? What's your relationship like with money? And I've just realized while you're talking, they're exactly the same. So I imagine that, I would really love to hear about people in the chat, like if that's the same for you, but your relationship with money is probably very similar to your relationship with food. It's all root chakra, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And the way that we do food is the way that we do life. It's like it's a direct mirror. And this is often a revelation. And sex.
Because that's what Sarah said last week. Like, what happens with yourself and your pleasure is what happens across the board. So it's almost like you could look at food, money, sex, or any microcosm of your life and see yourself as on the whole.
Yeah, but this is also then the exciting bit, because from that sort of spiritual journey, it's often the issue that presents itself. So for some women like listening right now, they know that their stuff is around food because it's the thing that dominates them. Whereas maybe someone else, it's more about their like their relationship with their like from like a sexual side, like you were saying with Sarah. Maybe from others it's money, because actually we are all one. Yeah. So that relationship with food specifically, certainly from like my work, there is always a direct link. So there's always a direct link to someone's life, someone's pleasure, their relationship to themselves, sex, money. It's all connected. And the beautiful thing is when a woman starts working on her like relationship to food, it then does start to filter out into other areas, because it can't not do. You know, you can't start healing your relationship to food and kind of unraveling that, say, scarcity mindset, whereby you give yourself permission to leave food on your plate, to not clear everything that you're given. That will naturally start to impact money stuff, money stories, because they're often very closely connected anyway. So it's really fascinating to work with somebody, because it often starts to filter through in a way that they often aren't expecting.
It's so interesting, isn't it? It's so interesting. It's never about what it's about.
No,
it's
never.
always deeper, isn't it? And it's so easy, and we've lived in a culture where it's like, well, we'll just get the eating disorder sorted and everything will be fine, or we'll just get that sorted and everything will be fine. But that's just a byproduct of something calling from inside, right? Which is why it's the spiritual practice. Like, it's all the spiritual practice.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
The lifelong journey.
I know, there is no quick fix to this, you know, and I think from a journey point of view, because often, you know, people will sort of ask me, it's like, well, how long is this going to take? You know, especially ones that maybe are quite new to that personal development, spiritual awakening kind of, you know.
And you're like, whoa, you've just opened Pandora's box. This is a lifetime job.
I'm like, you've just started. It's going to take a little while, but it's not going to take a lifetime. But it's the unraveling, isn't it? It's unraveling stuff, which it is a process. It's a journey.
So Danielle's just put in the comments, you know, it's really true. It's really resonated with the money and food aspects, the relationship between those. And she said, what exercises can we do? And I was going to ask the same thing, like, what kind of practices would help people who've got these kind of, you know, that they can identify that they've got issues with food, or like people who eat everything on their plate, or people who don't eat mindfully, or blah blah blah.
Yeah. Okay. So two things. So I'll explain a little bit about what can be done, and then maybe if we've got a chance, we could do like a little quick visualization sort of exercise.
Yes, please.
Okay. So usually, if we kind of use that example then of like money, food, etc., so kind of scarcity mindset from from kind of a very therapeutic point of view, and as we've already referenced, these have come from experiences. So it's experiences of someone's individual kind of story. So their dynamic around the dinner table with family, things that maybe mum and dad used to say, etc., etc. So they've come from somewhere. Now, the way that, because I'm sort of a therapist by sort of profession, the way that this works like best is often to work with somebody, only because we often can't see what we can't see. So self-awareness is really important. So actually having conversations like this, where maybe for some of you, you've gone, oh my God, that's so true. Like, I think I remember that with like my mum and dad, or like with my family, or whatever it might be. So having that self-awareness is really important. Now, how you can start to change that is, it's not about erasing anything. It's not about pretending that something hasn't happened, but it's about taking away that emotional charge. So the way that the mind works is we have this like memory blueprint, and quite often we can have programs that are still running now that actually were created 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So inner child stuff, energy work, like this, the labels aren't really that important. But when we have these programs that are still running now, it means that there's an emotional connection, there's an emotional cord between here and the past, sort of energetically. And actually, to really start to shift this, we have to disconnect that emotional charge. We have to unplug from it. So it's things like inner child can be useful. Things like certain types of meditation, self-hypnotherapy can be really powerful. Working with someone can be really powerful because they can really help you sort of connect in a different way. But that will be sort of something on a, perhaps not necessarily on a self-help level, because that is really shifting that inner dialogue that's going on within someone's head. Okay. In terms of that example though, and obviously we're talking about food, and this is still very, very relevant to the money stuff, because we referenced, Kate, when you said about, I always have to finish sort of everything that's there. So one of the things that is a big part of this work around fully acknowledging like that food piece and really sort of tuning in on a soul level is starting to fully connect to your body. So a big part of this, which for me is very spiritual now. It wouldn't have been 15 years ago because it was very abstract, but actually the more connected that somebody can be to their body, the more that they can really start to shift and change and actually rewrite everything around like food behavior.
And what do you mean by being connected to your body, like in a somatic sense?
Yes. So anyone that's watching or listening at the minute who, as we're talking, has that kind of awareness that maybe their relationship with food is a little bit in this sort of realm of it's a bit obsessive, or I do tend to overeat, or I do binge, or I do worry about what I'm eating, there's a very good chance that they're not actually connected to this in terms of the food, but actually they're driven by head. So it's very much about the thoughts around food is very ego driven. I should have this, I shouldn't have that, I think it's time to eat because it's lunchtime, I need to clear my plate because there's still food here. So they're being driven by thought. And a big part of healing and shifting this is to start shifting their energy from up here and actually starting to drop down into their body, meaning that they're allowing so for me, this is allowing their body wisdom to guide them. This is allowing their higher self to guide them. It's allowing their body to guide them. It's actually reconnecting and reawakening that relationship with her, with your body, so that she can tell you when she's had enough or what she's desiring, rather than the mind overriding it all the time. So this for me is a very spiritual practice, you know, this connection to body wisdom. My clients sometimes hate me for this because it's one of the core things that they have to be practicing. And I'll be honest, it's not always that easy.
Yeah, well, it's a really difficult thing because it hasn't been prized in our society, has it? You know, no one taught us how to connect with our bodies. You know, we've been very framed here, and this has been prized. And if we could, you know, decipher the mind and stay in the mind, then we were successful. And now, you know, and it was such a revelationary experience for me. To connect with my body, you know, and I remember when I, you know, in the early days of a spiritual path, someone saying to me, you are stuck in your head, like you are really stuck in your head. And I was looping in thoughts, and then to discover that I could come down into my body and listen to my body, and my body was able to communicate with me, was just revelationary. And there was all these like truths and treasures and untapped, you know, wisdom and clarity in the body. But I've really never thought about it in terms of how I communicate with my body in terms of food. So that's really enlightening for me. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. And I'm sure for the chat.
I think with the body piece as well, just to kind of expand on that very quickly, I think also as women, we're often, again, that conditioning of our bodies aren't safe, they can't be trusted, we shouldn't listen to them. And if we bring in like diet culture just for a second, we're also conditioned that our body should look a certain way. There's a lot of, I can see some of the comments at the minute, but a lot of yo-yo dieters can often have this dysfunctional relationship with food, because the more that somebody diets, the more disconnected they become from their body, because that's what diet culture teaches us. You know, it's like, don't listen to hunger, listen to the plan. Don't eat now because you're not allowed to, it's past 6 o'clock. So there's all that social conditioning as well, which again can make it difficult to begin with for women to start dropping into this and actually start listening to this, because it's so easy to not do that when they've been told that they shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
Yeah, that's so it's almost so simple,
I know.
but it's like almost, yeah, like shit, when we at this time because we've been told that's lunchtime, we at this time because we're told that's, and a lot of it we're not tuning into our body sense, our body's calls, our body's requests. That is just such an amazing skill to have. And
Yeah.
also, just you were talking about the yo-yo dieting culture, and we'll go to some of these comments in a minute because there's a couple of comments there. But something that I'd like to add to that is body image. Now, as you know, that I work with women a lot around body image and their relationship with their body, and that is massively close to my heart because I've had body image issues myself for years and years and years, and overcome quite a lot of those. Although that is a cycle, we can still kind of come back to those feelings. And I think that my relationship, my ability to communicate my body, be in my body, and communicate effectively with my body is when I like it. And so it's almost a vicious circle, isn't it? Like, yeah, just you feed, you can feed your body bad foods. I know we don't call them bad foods, but foods that are not necessarily nutritious for us, and then we feel like shit, and then we don't almost want to give our bodies the time and attention to listen to them and explore them, because we're like, oh, I hate the look of you today, and then that's when we can come back up here. So
Absolutely. And body image, pardon the pun, but it feeds into this like so much, because most people that do end up becoming emotional eaters and binge eaters and food obsessive, they're part of diet culture. I've never worked with a woman yet who has had some kind of food issue, who's never been on a diet, or who has never been weight conscious. So they're connected. So this is why when someone's trying to heal their relationship with food, we do have to address body image as well, because they run parallel. And actually that reference that you've just said then, which is so very, very true, is that so many of us, like all of us collectively, we have this conditional acceptance of self. So if I feel good, I like myself. Think about dieting. If I'm a certain number, I think I'm amazing. If I'm not that number, I can't stand the sight of me. And that in itself is at the core of this, because on a soul level, we accept ourselves unconditionally. But actually we've moved away from our ability to do that because of everything that we're talking about right now. And this is the soul work, this is the spiritual work, this is the coming back to self work. And it does come in waves, and it isn't always easy, but it's why we're all here.
So Rebecca says, I'm a serial yo-yo dieter. I'll successfully lose 2 stone and then it'll all come back. I can get into the weight loss mindset for a year at a time and then lose it. So all this is resonating so much. I've been wanting to feel my body for so long rather than constantly counting calories.
I hear you. That's that yo-yo dieting behavior, Rebecca, is, and this might not be necessarily what you perhaps want to hear, but that is actually part of the issue. Because being in that place, that mindset, I know you've referenced about the weight loss mindset, but being in that diet mindset is one of the massive triggers for this all or nothing approach, for the going up, going down, for the liking yourself one minute, not liking yourself the next. So as we've been talking about the body wisdom, really starting to connect to this, and actually intentionally walking away from diet culture, although that in itself can bring up fear and panic and anxiety and overwhelm, that's where you start the journey. Because you're never going to get the solution that you think you're going to get by staying where you are. It's about stepping away from that diet space really and starting to trust what's going on here.
And I noticed that Rebecca in that said, I've been wanting to feel my body for so long. And that for me like feels like the essence of, that's the desire, isn't it? That's the real soul pull. I want to feel my body, I want to connect with myself. And so how can we do that? How can we feel into our bodies? If it's someone who goes, I live in my head, I don't even know how to tune into my body, I don't know how to talk to my body, how can we do that?
Okay, right, really quick little sort of exercise for you to all do.
Are we going to do that now?
Yes, we'll do it now. So this isn't a complicated exercise. It's not something that you're going to need, loads of things to do like in a powerful way, but it's an invitation for you to do this regularly throughout the day. So we'll run through it, I'll explain kind of how I would encourage you to use it. And then I would encourage you to keep practicing this. So close your eyes. I'm guessing that all of you are safe to do so. None of you will be watching whilst you're driving cars, presumably.
Just before we start, there may be a cameo appearance of my partner coming past in a second. I know he wanted to go through the kitchen and I moved, you see, usually I'm that way. So if he ever wants to wander past, he can. And so now I think he's like, do I crawl? Luke, just let you know if you want to pop through, now's a good time. Preferably to make me a cup of tea.
Good job.
Which he did say he was going to do at the beginning of the call, but he didn't. Did you? You're making me a cup of tea? Oh, shit, yeah. We're going to start a practice now. So you've got...
It won't be long. Only a couple of minutes.
Herbal tea, please. Okay. Yes, that's
okay.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, so if everybody closes their eyes, preferably uncross your legs, put your feet on the floor. And then if you just start taking a few deep breaths and just bring your attention to your breathing. So breathing in and then breathing out. And if you want to imagine that you're breathing in relaxation, you're breathing out any kind of tension or tightness, the only thing that you're doing is just focusing on your breath. Just taking a few deep breaths in and a few deep breaths out, just feeling your feet on the floor. And then as you do that, I want you to imagine that in your mind, there's like a sparkly, shiny little ball. And this sparkly, shiny ball is probably where you are. So this is your spiritual self. It's where your focus is. For those of you that spend a lot of time in your mind. And as you imagine that sparkly ball in your mind, and it can be any color that you want, just bring your attention to it. And as you bring your attention to this sparkly ball in your mind, I wonder if you can start pulling it now down towards your body. And all you're going to do is just bring this ball now all the way down from your head. Just see if you can bring it down your throat. You don't have to push. You don't have to make this any difficult or any more challenging for yourself. Just allowing it to come down your throat. Just bringing your attention onto this ball, and you're just going to bring it now down into your chest. Just keep breathing in that relaxation, breathing out any tension or tightness. And then I wonder if you can bring that ball a little bit further down your diaphragm, down in towards your tummy. And then just bring that ball down in towards your stomach and just hold it there. And as you hold it there, just bring your full attention and your full focus onto this sparkly ball now in your stomach. And that's all you need to do, is just focus your attention on that ball. And just do a few more deep breaths. Just breathing in. Just feeling that ball in your belly. Breathing out. Just bringing your attention into your stomach. Just breathing another deep breath in. And just bringing your attention to this sparkly ball again in your tummy. And then just breathe out. And then one more time. Just breathing in a nice deep breath of relaxation. Just bringing your full awareness now to your tummy, to that sparkly ball. And then breathing out any remaining tension or tightness. And then in your own time, just open your eyes and just come back to here and now.
Thank you, Rachel. It's such a really simple but really effective way to get into your body.
It's so someone taught me that years ago, and when they first explained it, I honestly rolled my eyes thinking, how's that going to do anything? But actually, we were saying about the intention of eating. This is about intentionally bringing your focus, your energy, your spiritual self, your soul, whatever you want to call it, back into you. Yeah. Because quite often what happens, certainly throughout the day, we kind of fragment parts of us energetically off. Like we think about things from this morning, or we're thinking about things that we need to do later on tonight. So energetically, we're up here. Yeah. And just that exercise of you're bringing all of you here, and you're going to bring all of you back down into here, and then just hold it. Hold it for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then that's it. But the more that you can get into that habit of bring myself back in, you start conditioning yourself to become more connected to the body.
And then what can you do from there? Like, is there a way of communicating with yourself, like asking questions?
Yes. So when you're actually in this place, so you're bringing yourself back into you, that then is an amazing time for you to actually then speak to your body. So a practical tip now would be, let's say that you are wanting to start feeling your body again, connecting with her, okay, repairing all this stuff. Running through that quick exercise then first, and that can take literally 20-30 seconds. It doesn't need to be very long, but when you do that, you then actually start talking to her. So, right, body, are you hungry? And you're waiting for feedback. Do you want anything to eat? Do you want sweet, salty, savory? Do you want something sugary? Can I get you anything? So almost as if you're having this conversation with like this little small person, or this like little pet, or like it's something, it's a part of you, but making sure that you do this connection first, because that's when you start to become aware of the feedback, as opposed to if you stay in your head and you're like, oh, I think I'm going to eat something, but I don't know yet. So it's that process.
And I think even though I haven't done that process with food as such, I've done it with emotions. You know, if I've got those kind of very vague but present emotions in my body, and I'm like, I've got something really niggly in my stomach, or I've got a tight pain in my chest, you know, and often I believe that lots of the pains in the body have got an emotional backbone to them.
Oh yeah, always.
So I do quite a lot of somatic stuff and ask myself, what is that emotion? What are you telling me? What do I need to look at? You know, what's my body, you know, asking of me? And I found that voice has got louder and louder and louder, and that almost like, you know, it's a relationship, it's almost a language that needs to be fine-tuned, isn't it?
Yeah, and having a bit of patience with this as well. You know, a lot of women maybe begin kind of doing this work thinking, well, my body wisdom doesn't work, or she doesn't talk to me, or mine's just somehow broken because it's just not there. And actually, just again, that permission and patience that it is there, but because you've tuned out of it for such a long time, you just need a bit of patience in order for you to start hearing, but also trusting what you hear as well. And I'm sure that you're familiar with that yourself, Kate, that often that feedback that you get from that inner part of you, that there's a little bit of, you need to nurture it. You need to start being able to trust what you hear.
Well, my body was really fucking angry at me, actually. You know, I'd been horrible to it for years. You know, I'd looked in the mirror and hated parts of my body, and particularly my breasts. I've had such a relationship with my breasts over the years. And, you know, after, I've been really vocal about the fact that I had breast enlargements after I breastfed, and now I've had them removed. And, you know, I've gone full circle, and I had to do so much forgiveness. And thank you, my darling. Oh, and as if by magic, I get brought the titty cup. Couldn't write it, could you? Someone actually bought me this, and I just after I'd had my breast enlargement taken out. But anyway, I digress a little. But the point of what I'm saying is that my body, before I could really start communicating with it at a deep level, needed a lot of my love, a lot of my apology, a lot of my healing, because it didn't trust me anymore. That voice there wasn't speaking, because it was like, fuck you. You've treated me like shit for years, and now you want to talk to me?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, that's a very valid point. Sometimes kind of like forgiveness work is also part of any kind of spiritual journey, and it's still very valid for this conversation as well, because you're absolutely right. Sometimes there's that expectation that, right, I'm not going to do the dieting, and I'm going to start listening to my body, and why is she not talking, and why can't I hear her? And sometimes it's actually needing to be reminded that, well, if you've ignored her for the last 20 years, she's going to be a little bit apprehensive to start talking to you, because every time she has done in the past, you've kind of shut her up. So, and that's an emotional thing to experience. So, yeah, absolutely.
Let's go to the chat. Marta says, I often know what my body wants and doesn't want, but I struggle to actually listen to. So I'll read that again. I often know what my body wants and doesn't want, and when, but I struggle to actually listen to it, and I often override it. Yeah,
so that's kind of that body wisdom piece. So any kind of language around I override it, there's kind of that awareness there, but this is making the decision.
Yes.
So that can often be from sort of the ego conditioned mind. It can often be from sort of diet rules, diet culture, what someone thinks they should be doing.
Yeah.
And so practicing this, practicing body wisdom, like really starting to repair this relationship, and just have, you know, that permission again, that some days this will be easy,
Yeah.
and some days it won't be. But that's also part of the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look at Nia. My husband does just that: breakfast, lunch, dinner on time. He starts tapping his watch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people eat based on the clock, and it's really fascinating when you start kind of, you know, awakening to your own truth, that a lot of women will start to realize that actually their eating habits and patterns and behaviors aren't necessarily what they've always believed them to be.
Yes.
So again, we're often conditioned of, you get up and have your breakfast, you then need your lunch, you then have your dinner, tea, and actually some bodies don't work that way. You know, this body wisdom piece, some people actually enjoy to eat more often, smaller meals, or they don't often eat in the morning, and the first time they eat at midday, and that's okay, because it's based on them, it's based on what their body's asking for.
Yes, exactly. And I think, and that's the thing, isn't it, with like kind of advice and stuff, it really needs to come from within, and your innate knowing for what your body needs and wants. And just to a personal situation, I'm actually fasting today, and decided that I really needed to give my body a reset. Because since being at home, I think our house has been a little bit like Christmas Day, but without the presents. And there's been lots of cheese, and I don't often eat cheese, don't eat a lot of dairy. But yeah, somehow we've ended up with this big slab of cheese. And
Cheese board.
This naughty boy, oh, Emily's fasting as well. Brilliant. We're together. And also my friend Vic, who's also in this conversation. Let's see if she's still here. Is she here? Are you here, Vic? Oh, the bugger, where is she? She said she was coming on. She's fasting as well, so we've been texting each other all day. Oh my God, Lorna's fasting as well. It's fasting Monday today. But anyway, so I am doing it because I need a reset, because of the cheese gate thing that's happened in this house, and the fact that this naughty one has brought in white bread into the house, and they are my two fucking downfalls in life. Like, if someone puts white bread and cheese in the house, it's like crack. And so I really need a reset. I really need my body to be like, this is not what you want, this is just what you think you want. So, and that always works for me in terms of a reset. But in relation to what you were saying, is that's my body's innate wisdom. Like, I know that a fast is really, really great for me. It might not be for somebody else, but for me, it just resets me, and all those cravings that I start to get in the habit of craving, they stop, and I can go back to some kind of healthy eating, and I can really listen then again to what I actually do want to eat, what my body is actually asking for. I'm laughing because white bread and cheese is my thing too. Let's not get us in a room together, Lorna, with white bread and cheese, because shit will go down. Yeah, I've just missed a couple of comments there that I'd like to go back to. Nia says, I had health anxiety for 2 decades and couldn't eat what I wanted. And in the last 5 years, the anxiety has lessened its grip. But now I've gotten to a place of, I denied myself for so long, I'm eating what I want, when I want. I feel like I've lost control, I'm struggling. And do you know what? I resonate with that so much, because when we were younger, my mum used to, she used to hide the treat food, because otherwise we were like gannets, us kids, you know, we'd find something and we wouldn't just eat one of them, we'd eat the whole lot. And she'd get home from work and there'd be nothing in the house, so she hid it. And then as an adult, I went through a stage of like, fuck it, I can have whatever I want, and almost went the other way in that kind of act of rebellion because I've been deprived. So it sounds like Nimara's experiencing something similar.
Yeah, rebellion often happens after periods of deprivation, whether it be kind of intentional deprivation like dieting, trying to be healthy eating, etc., or it's been induced due to health and medical issues. What we've been talking about though is still a very, very valid. So trying to just acknowledge what the body is asking. And even in those moments when you're like, oh, sod it, I'm going to eat this because I want to, and you can feel that it's rebellion, see if you can give yourself full unconditional permission in that moment and just see what happens.
Okay, and that feeds on really nicely to what Rebecca said. I worry that if I listen to my body, she'll just be really greedy and she won't stop eating.
Yeah, so that fear always comes up because when someone has been so conditioned to think that they need to eat in a certain way, or they need to be good, or they need to watch just, foods and, as you were saying, like bread and cheese, etc. It's that conditioned thinking of, I don't trust my body and my body can't be trusted. So actually repairing this connection to body is so crucial, because even though that fear will always be there for a lot of women when they start this kind of journey work, I will categorically tell you that when you get to a place of like being able to listen and actually starting to trust what you hear, your body would not eat herself into oblivion. The head wants you to think that, and that fear part comes from ego, but actually your true inner wisdom, she is so in tune with what she needs, what she wants, and when she's had enough, that if we're able to allow that to be our driving force, it would never be to the point of, I'm just going to keep eating and eating and eating. That comes from the head. So that's not a body thing. Okay, there's two separate things going on in that conversation there. This is very different to this.
I imagine, and I think my head is very, very clever, and she's got all sorts of wily, wicked ways to get me to feel convinced that it's the truth talking. So I imagine that my ego may trick me and go, your body really does want this right now. This is what's going to make you feel, full.
Okay, so should we do a bit of an advanced strategy, Kate?
Yes, let's go for an advanced strategy, because my mind needs that. She's clever.
Okay, so the body wisdom piece is actually two kind of parts to it. We've only spoken about the first one. So the first one is about connecting to body. Okay, everybody needs to do that. However, the next bit of body wisdom is about the feedback. So when you connect to body, she also starts to talk to you, and she starts to give you feedback in terms of everything. And when we talk about food specifically, and I say kind of tongue in cheek, this is an advanced strategy, but it's more about actually being able to listen. Let's say for you with the bread and the cheese, if you're eating that in whatever way you've been eating it up until kind of yesterday, if the feedback from your body is like, do you know what, I feel shit, or do you know what, I feel so tired, so bloated, I feel dreadful, and that's what she's telling you, when you're in that place of listening and you're in a relationship with her and you're talking and you're communicating, you then go, do you know what, I'm gonna have a bit of a reset tomorrow. That's body wisdom. That is true body wisdom, because our body is always giving us feedback, and this is where we then have to be really mindful of actually just demoralizing food. Like, there's nothing wrong with bread, there's nothing wrong with cheese, there's nothing bad about cakes and biscuits and crisps, but it's about being aware of the feedback. And if your body is actually telling you, when you eat that, I feel a bit crap afterwards, you can still choose to eat it. It's not morally wrong. But for me, this personal journey, this spiritual development, is starting to be truthful. It's about being honest. It's about listening. It's about self-respect. It's about self-responsibility, the big one as well.
Yeah. It's self-responsibility, exactly. And you can kind of like, I can see myself doing this. If I'm feeling a bit fuck you about the world, I've always made it the world's fault rather than mine. Like, he made me do this. He's made me eat all these cakes, and then that's it. It's like self-responsibility. Am I going to do, you can get rid of self-responsibility by blaming someone else, because it's always easy to blame externally, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this, again, food's no different. So in terms of like, so some of the things that we've said, like the emotions that might come up for someone, it's like, oh, sod it, I'm just going to go and eat that. There's nothing wrong in that behavior, but could you kind of step or lean into more about that self-responsibility piece of, well, I'm feeling a bit angry right now. I'm eating this massive cream cake. Is that really what my body wants? Like, really, if I tune in, is that really what she's wanting? Or does she want something else? Does she need something else to change that emotion for her? This is the work. This is like self-mastery, personal development. It's the thing to be aware of.
Nia's asked, I rarely eat because I'm hungry. Should we only eat when hungry?
Oh, good question. So, not necessarily. A lot of people might be aware of like the notion of intuitive eating. I don't teach intuitive eating specifically, because that in itself can become a diet for some people. Like, they become obsessed on those kind of rules.
Right, okay.
I would encourage all of you to be aware of hunger, and obviously in those moments to actually feed your body what she's asking to be fed. However, there will still always be times when maybe you are eating and it's not necessarily always physical hunger. So birthday cake because it's a birthday celebration, or you meet it with, well, maybe not now, but you meet it with your best friend in a cafe and you want a piece, a biscuit with your coffee.
I miss those days.
I know. So when I said it, I was like, oh, I shouldn't probably say that. We'll all get really sad. But yeah, so as much as possible, eat when hungry. But don't become fixated on that. It's more important about this connecting and actually being self-aware about some of the things that we've spoken of. So yeah.
And how can we tell the difference then between when we're hungry and when it's something else? I suppose it's just going back to that learning the language, right?
It's learning the language. This is body wisdom, and body, again, sort of hunger, physical hunger is felt in the body. Yeah, most people think about hunger. They try and intellectualize food. I think I'm hungry now. It's lunchtime. Yes. Or I'm gonna eat such and such for tea tonight because that's what I think I'm gonna want. And actually, it's about shifting the language and actually allowing ourselves to feel. And maybe for some people that are watching right now, they might not actually know what hunger feels like because they've been so disconnected from their body for such a long time. So that again is part of that process to actually recognize what is hunger for you, because hunger is very different for everybody. Yes. It's not always the rumbling in the tummy. It could be something slightly different for everybody.
This is a brilliant question. Do you think this is a very female thing? As I have this really bizarre relationship with food, but my husband just gets food and tells me I don't need to worry about food. I just need to exercise more. He doesn't need to get it. Do you know, I feel exactly the same about Luke. If I could get Luke in here now and show you him and like his body, it's almost like we're eating completely different diets, and I think I think we've got a bit different body types for one, so it's perhaps not what Rebecca's saying, but his relationship with food and the way his body seems to take on food is completely different to mine, completely different. And yeah, he just eats, and yeah, my husband's currently eating ice cream lolly. Yeah, bastards. I'm sure it's not all men and women. I'm sure it's body type to some degree, but if I eat something, it's like it shows up like that. With Luke, his body just doesn't seem to change at all. Just
I think there's some truth to what Rebecca said there, though, about, I only work predominantly with women anyway, and I do think that women have got more of an emotional connection to kind of food and body image than what perhaps men do.
Yes.
We know statistically that more women struggle with food than what men do. It's not to say that men don't, but the statistics confirm that actually this is more of a female issue than what it is for guys.
Yeah.
And I think
there's been so many more restrictions for women, all the shoulds and the can'ts and the cans.
Well, I was about to say, we've also got that next layer then of the whole kind of, patriarchal suppression, which actually ties into this because it's about body image and dieting and what we should look like and the rules and, all that we won't go into tonight because that's a whole nother conversation. But that is also very relevant to this because we are carrying that kind of ancestral suppression that all of our female ancestors have carried about the trying to be what's the word I'm looking for, being encouraged to take up less space.
Yes, exactly. And there's a lot going on there, isn't there, in terms of taking up space and how big we can be physically and wow, there's just so much in it, isn't there? And it kind of, it's a complex issue, but it's also incredibly simple as well. It's like we have detached in so many ways, in so many areas of life to us as beings at soul level, as spiritual people. But that's the answer to it, isn't it? It's reclaiming ourselves. It's what I do is my work. It's what you do is your work. It's going inside and it's reclaiming what's ours. And at fundamental soul level, these are just all our kind of societal issues, aren't they? And it's like it's never putting anything else on. It's just a constant de-stripping of things that we've been taught that are perhaps and they're very much so outdated, because we're not the women that we were. We're fucking new women. We're new women, and we're empowering ourselves, and one of those is empowering ourselves with our relationship with food.
It's massive. This is certainly for me, and I know I'm kind of approaching this from like the spiritual side, but for me, there's so much passion behind me talking about the food issues, because there is nothing more powerful than a woman who goes, fuck it, I'm not going to diet anymore, and I'm fully embracing my body, and I don't give a shit what people think of who I am. Like, that's kind of the essence of my work, as it is for yours. Like, we're all doing the same thing. And actually allowing women to fully break away from that conditioning about food and body image, and, you know, actually allowing them to feel the feels and connect to the body. This is what the world is needing. And got goosebumps when I said that.
Me too. Exactly. It's so true. And that's what it comes down to. And what a lovely place to kind of end there. I just want to make sure that people have got questions answered, and people who are sitting there and think, well, you know, because I appreciate that we've talked very much around you know, some kind of everyday things, overeating, eating stuff on your plate, but there might be people listening who, you know, would associate with having, you know, a real deep embedded food addiction, and they might want to work with you at a deeper level. So how can they get in contact with you, Rachel?
So you can find me at soulfedwoman.com. So that's my thing, is about being a soul-fed woman. So it's soulfedwoman.com, and I'm soulfedwoman on pretty much all social media, so Facebook, Instagram, etc. And I've got a little free program that I run every so often, which is really to help women overcome like addictive compulsive binge eating. So we've got one of those starting in a couple of weeks, I think it is.
Amazing. So people can get in contact with you, and you've got a book on Amazon as well, haven't you?
I have. Can I do
show us. What amazing work you're doing in the world. And just thank you for sharing all your wisdom with us. It's, you know, I've definitely learned a lot myself, and, you know, from working in this field, it's so easy that I, you know, to kind of look at this and look at that, and I've never looked at it in relationship with food, and it's exactly the same. It's the same work. It's incredible, really. And I feel like at the end of these temple talks, everyone should go away with like an action or a biggest takeaway. So it could be just like a sentence or a mantra or something that they want to do differently moving forward. And I always think that kind of seals it and creates you know, something meaningful to take out of this. So I know mine is going to be I vow to tune into my body wisdom.
That's a powerful one.
Yeah. And so what would other people's be before we leave? Just people saying thank you, and that we need to do a live circle together. Love the meeting. It's been amazing. Thank you so much. It's been really interesting. So yeah, just anyone want to put in their mantra of their biggest takeaway or something they want to do more of in the world, in their lives, with their bodies, with food. Just add them into the panelist comments before you go. Nia says, I vow to listen to my body and only give her what she needs. I vow to accept myself for who I am, from Rebecca. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Really beautiful. Keep them coming, guys. I raise my awareness of why I'm eating.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
I raise my awareness of why I'm eating. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Yeah. So just a massive, huge bundle of my love coming out to you, Rachel, and all the women who've come to the circle tonight and stepped into this little arena with us. And I hope you all have a beautiful evening. And all those fasters, come on, keep going. Only a couple of hours left. I don't actually know if that's appropriate to be talking about self-fasting and things like this, but you know, if it's for the right reasons, you know, we're fasting not because we're in any kind of depletion or whatever, but just as a reset and to do the right thing for our bodies. I'm just fasting until tomorrow, Nia. So I'm going strong. I was a little bit worried that I was going to become a little bit foggy on this phone call and be like, but I've done all right. I'm doing okay.
It's good.
So yeah, Rachel, thank you so much. And just
thank you.
People that are still on the call, just to let you know that next week on our Temple Talk, we've got Temple Talks. We've got Steph Magenta. You know Steph, don't you, Rachel?
Yes, I do.
We met at one of her events. And Steph is an amazing fireball of a woman. She's from a shamanic background, but her lifelong passion is breath work. Breath work is an amazing practice. Some of you may have done it before, others of you might be curious, never done it before, but she's going to talk about some of the benefits of that. However, I really believe that as much as breath work is amazing in all capacities, the person who drives the breathwork session, there's their essence and their energy, and what comes through them can be ultra powerful. And the breathwork sessions that I've had with Steph, fucking hell, they've been really profound, really releasing, just incredible. Could talk about that all night. So if you want to attend that session with Steph, she's going to do a practice with us as well. It's not on Thursday, Emily, it's on Wednesday, and that's going to be all of the temple talks, apart from this one because we couldn't do it on Wednesday last week. This is on a Monday, but all the temple talks are on a Wednesday at 9 o'clock. And just one extra thing that I'd like to 9 o'clock, what am I talking about? 7 o'clock. What I want to say before we go is, you might wonder why you're popping in your email address for each individual temple talks and think, bloody hell, she asked me for this last week. And the reason we do that is because I give the email addresses to the talk, so she can say, to the talker, so she can tell you some of her wonderful offerings and you can keep in touch with her. But if you don't want to be on any of those mailing lists, please just delete. But it's just a way for people to stay in touch with you. And finally, I'm offering a new batch of 5 weeks of my sister circles, and they're going to be starting shortly. So please look out for the event on the Sister Circle Inner Temple group. I'm going to do a batch of 5 weeks, and we're just coming to the end of this batch of them. So please sign up if you want 5 weeks of gorgeous Inner Temple Sister Circle feminine love. So loads of love.
Amazing.
Loads of love to you, Rachel. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and your work in the world.
Thank you. Same to you. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Nice to see you all.
Lots of love, gorgeous women. Bye.